Her words cut deeper than any knife. "Stop acting like we're married." But he didn't yell, he didn't fight, he disappeared silently. And what he left behind would make her scream, realizing too late the price of underestimating devotion. Subscribe, like, comment and watch till the end to share this interesting story to family and friends. The restaurant was bathed in warm, golden light, the gentle hum of conversation and the clinking of cutlery filling the air. Aaron sat stiffly in his chair, hands resting on the edge of the table, knuckles pale against the crisp white tablecloth. Across from him, Lauren leaned casually into her lover, her fingers brushing against his arm as if she owned the room, and him. Aaron's eyes flicked to the faces of other diners, some glancing briefly, sensing tension in the air, but most absorbed in their own meals. He could feel every pair of eyes as if the entire restaurant had zeroed in on the humiliation unfolding at his table. Lauren's laughter, sharp and triumphant, cut through the ambient murmur, wrapping around him like a vice. "Stop acting like we're married, Aaron," she said casually, her voice carrying just enough for him to hear, yet playful enough to suggest this was all some cruel performance. "This isn't your world." Aaron's chest tightened. He forced his jaw to relax, swallowing the lump that had formed there. The fork in his hand hovered mid-air, trembling slightly before he set it down. The plate of steak and roasted vegetables in front of him seemed suddenly absurd, as if it were a prop in a play that he had been unwillingly cast into. Lauren's lover chuckled softly, clearly delighted by her dominance. "You really don't get it, do you?" he whispered, leaning closer to her. She tilted her head back and laughed, a high, brittle sound that made Aaron flinch. He wanted to speak. To defend himself, to demand respect, to let her know that the life they'd built together, the years of effort, sweat, and sacrifice, had not been a joke. But he remained still, a silent sentinel. His hand tightened around his napkin, smoothing the crease repeatedly as he fought the fire rising in his chest. Years of labor, long days hauling lumber, welding steel beams under the sun, and countless nights imagining a shared future, now seemed invisible. He remembered the day he had surprised her with the sedan, hiding the keys in a box of her favorite chocolates. Her squeal of joy, the way she had hugged him tightly, pressed her face into his shoulder, each memory now a bitter counterpoint to this very moment. "Honestly," Lauren continued, leaning slightly forward, her gaze fixed on her lover, "he's embarrassing. I can't believe we're even still acting like a couple." Her words dripped with disdain, every syllable a precise stab aimed to wound. Aaron's lips pressed into a thin line. He looked down at his plate, then slowly up at her, letting her see the calm in his eyes. He said nothing. Not a word. The silence between them was thick, almost oppressive, but it was Aaron's weapon now. By not responding, he transformed her cruelty into fuel, quiet, patient, and relentless. As Lauren's laughter continued, oblivious to the storm brewing behind her husband's eyes, Aaron's mind began to shift. He would not be ridiculed. Not today. Not ever again. The humiliation she wanted him to feel was hers to claim, but he had begun calculating how to ensure that, in the end, she would be the one left with emptiness and he would be free. The candle flickered between them, casting shadows on Aaron's tense face. In that moment, the scene in the upscale restaurant, Lauren's arrogance, her lover's amusement, Aaron's silent fury, was not just a meal, it was the opening move in a game that would leave no one unchanged. The ride home was quiet. City lights flickered past the windshield, painting Aaron's face in fragmented streaks of orange and white. The hum of the engine was the only sound that cut through the silence, steady and unwavering, mirroring the calm he had forced into his own chest. Behind him, the memory of the restaurant lingered, Lauren leaning against her lover, laughing, whispering the words that would not leave him, "Stop acting like we're married." Aaron gripped the steering wheel, knuckles pale, but he did not raise his voice. He did not curse. He did not shout. He let the tires hum over the asphalt, letting each mile stretch his patience and focus. Inside, a storm raged, fueled by years of unnoticed devotion. He remembered every sleepless night covering for her, every dollar he had earned laboring under the sun while she attended gala dinners or shopped at boutique stores. Every sacrifice she had laughed at, every promise she had broken in small ways, now aggregated into a single burning clarity. This could not continue. Lauren's words were a blade, sharp and precise. But unlike the restaurant diners who had only glimpsed the surface, Aaron's response would not be immediate or reckless. He had learned restraint, patience. He had built a life carefully, brick by brick, sweat by sweat, and he was not about to let one humiliating night unravel it all without thought. His mind ran through the possibilities quietly. Divorce. Separation of assets. The car he had saved for years to surprise her. The house they had built together, every corner a testament to labor and sacrifice. She wanted him to vanish, to be erased from her life like a bothersome shadow. Fine. But he would do it on his terms. Slowly. Precisely. Completely. At home, he parked the car in the garage and let it idle for a moment, listening to the soft clicks of the engine cooling. He turned to face the empty living room, where the faint glow of streetlights pressed through the blinds, stretching long distorted shadows across the floor. Everything looked the same. Yet he knew nothing would remain unchanged. Not after this. Aaron placed his hands on the counter, fingers brushing over the edges of objects he had once polished for her approval. The salt and pepper shakers, the coffee maker, the small stack of bills he had left neatly organized on the corner for her. He inhaled, tasting the faint scent of the air freshener she preferred, the same one she always claimed was just a small luxury. The familiarity was suffocating, but it grounded him. Silently, he walked to his office corner, pulling out a notebook he kept for schedules, finances, and plans. He flipped through the pages, listing house assets, bills, and items that would matter if this marriage ended. He scribbled notes, rough but deliberate, each word marking the start of a plan. Aaron sat back in his chair, breathing deep. His hands rested on the armrest, steady and unshaking. He was hurt, yes, but anger had settled into focus. Pain had sharpened into strategy. Lauren thought she had humiliated him tonight. She thought she had diminished him. But in her arrogance, she had also given him exactly what he needed. A reason to act and the clarity to do so without hesitation. He closed the notebook and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Patience would be his ally. Silence would be his weapon. And when the time came, every moment of mockery, every cruel word would be repaid, not in anger but in finality. Aaron's truck glided through the city streets, the streetlights casting fleeting shadows across his face. He kept both hands on the wheel, knuckles taut, jaw tight, yet his breathing remained steady. The radio hummed softly, a background noise he barely noticed, drowned out by the relentless loop of Lauren's laughter in his mind. Every note of it was a knife twisting, every whispered word of mockery replayed with cruel clarity. Stop acting like we're married. He drove past the familiar storefronts, the diners, the late-night coffee shops, all indifferent to the private humiliation he had endured. The city moved on, unaware, and Aaron knew he would soon move on too, but on his own terms. His mind was a quiet machine, running through sequences of what must be done. The house, the car, the savings, the papers. Each asset, each memory, each moment of devotion she had casually dismissed became a piece of the plan. He thought of the small apartment they had rented during their first year of marriage, the walls peeling, the pipes rattling at night. He had carried boxes up the creaky stairs himself, hands blistered and sore but proud. He had promised her comfort, a life they could call their own. And for what? A lifetime of devotion now treated as a punchline in front of a stranger. Aaron's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, catching his own reflection in the dimly lit interior. The face staring back at him was calm, measured, almost serene. There was no tremor, no visible anger, no hint of despair. Only focus. Only patience. Only the cold certainty that the next steps he would take would be deliberate, controlled, and irreversible. The memory of the sedan he had bought her, hiding the keys in her favorite chocolates, watching her squeal in surprise and hug him tightly, rose unbidden. He could still feel the warmth of her embrace, the trust in her eyes. And he remembered the contrast. That same woman hours ago laughing in front of her lover, mocking him as if he were nothing. The betrayal sharpened something inside him, something he could not undo but could now redirect. The streets outside blurred in streaks of neon and headlights, yet inside the truck, time seemed suspended. He considered the divorce, the separation of assets, the meticulous steps required to reclaim what was his without giving her the satisfaction of confrontation. Each option passed through his mind, weighed and calculated. There would be no shouting matches, no scenes. Only precision. Only quiet, undeniable finality. As he neared his neighborhood, Aaron slowed the truck, letting the engine idle at a stoplight. His chest rose and fell evenly, but beneath the surface, a storm churned, a mix of grief, indignation, and something almost like anticipation. He had loved without reserve, given everything he could, and now he would reclaim himself. Piece by piece, detail by detail, he would dismantle the life that had humiliated him so publicly. When the light turned green, Aaron pressed the accelerator and moved forward. The house was ahead, darkened windows awaiting him, oblivious to the storm contained within its walls. He parked, left the engine running for a heartbeat longer than necessary, and rested his hands on the wheel. The night air, cool and still, whispered through the open window. Silently he made a vow: patience first, precision always. And when the time comes, she will understand the true weight of what she has done. Aaron stepped out of the truck, shutting the door with measured calm. Nothing had changed yet. But everything was about to. The house was silent, the faint glow from the streetlights filtering through the blinds and casting long, angular shadows across the floor. Aaron walked into his office corner, the small room lined with shelves of tools, bills, and notebooks, a place that had always been his sanctuary for order and precision. Tonight, it would become the headquarters of his plan. He set his briefcase on the desk and flipped it open, revealing neatly stacked papers, tax records, bank statements, and receipts from years of meticulous budgeting. His eyes swept over each item, absorbing the evidence of countless sacrifices he had made, each a testament to the life he had worked tirelessly to build. For a moment, he let himself feel the weight of it all: the late nights at the construction site, the blistered hands, the empty stomachs he had endured to ensure she never went without. Then he exhaled, letting the sorrow fade into focus. Aaron pulled out a blank notebook and began to write. Step 1, divorce. Step 2, separation of assets. Step 3, sale of house. Step 4, sale of car. Step 5, reclaim personal belongings. Each item was methodically detailed, with subpoints: consult lawyer, gather documentation, organize financial accounts. He didn't rush. Each line was deliberate, precise, a blueprint for quiet, irreversible action. He paused, staring at the stack of papers beside him. The house they had shared, once a symbol of their dreams, now represented her arrogance, her cruelty, and the dismissive words she had thrown in front of a stranger. He envisioned the room stripped of her presence, the car gone, the accounts separated. He allowed himself a small, quiet satisfaction. She had wanted him erased, and he would grant her wish, but on his own terms, with control, dignity, and finality. Aaron's mind drifted briefly to the sedan, the gift he had saved for months to surprise her, hidden in a box of chocolates. The memory was sharp, her squeal of delight, the embrace, the joy she had shown. And now, that joy had been replaced by scorn, public ridicule, and laughter at his expense. He closed his eyes, letting the anger temper into resolve. He picked up his phone and began making calls, first to a trusted lawyer, then to a realtor he knew could act quickly, and finally to the car broker who had evaluated vehicles like his own. Each conversation was brief, businesslike, a step closer to dismantling the life she had taken for granted. Aaron remained calm, measured, each word chosen to leave no trace of emotion. As he hung up the last call, Aaron leaned back in his chair, hands resting on the arms, eyes fixed on the ceiling. The storm inside him had quieted into a sharp, focused precision. The humiliation of the restaurant, the laughter, the cruel words, all of it had crystallized into purpose. He would not act out of rage, he would act with strategy. He opened a drawer and pulled out the notebook he had kept for years, the one containing schedules, bills, and personal notes. He flipped through it, reviewing everything: assets, debts, shared purchases. Each detail would be addressed, each oversight corrected. Nothing would remain. No trace of her dominance, no reminders of her cruelty. Everything would be recalibrated, under his control, on his timeline. Aaron closed the notebook, a sense of calm satisfaction settling over him. The plan was clear. The first moves were set. And when the time came to execute, it would be precise, deliberate, and irrevocable. Tonight, patience was his ally and control his weapon. Morning light filtered softly through the kitchen blinds, casting thin lines across the polished counters. Lauren moved about the room with practiced ease, humming a tuneless song, brushing back strands of hair from her face as though nothing had happened the night before. The remnants of breakfast sat neatly stacked on plates, and the smell of freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air. Aaron stood at the sink, cleaning a few dishes she had left behind, every motion deliberate, controlled, precise. He glanced at her briefly, catching the curve of her smile as she scrolled through her phone, oblivious to the storm behind his calm exterior. She had no idea that every polite word, every neutral glance, was carefully calculated, that behind the restraint, he was already moving forward, silent, efficient, unstoppable. The humiliation she had inflicted at the restaurant had ignited a resolve that now guided every action. "Could you pour me some coffee?" Lauren asked lightly, turning to him with a faint tilt of her head, her tone casual, playful even. "Of course," he replied, his voice calm and even. He moved to the coffee pot, measuring and pouring with methodical precision, as if he were performing a ritual rather than an act of service. Lauren's eyes followed him, expecting submission, but all she saw was quiet efficiency. Nothing betrayed the rage or disappointment simmering beneath the surface. Aaron's mind raced as he prepared breakfast, mentally checking off the steps of his plan. The divorce paperwork would be ready soon, the house could be listed within days, the car, long a symbol of his devotion and her disregard, would be sold. Every small act in the kitchen, every nod and smile he gave her, was a mask, a public facade hiding the careful dismantling of their shared life. Lauren moved to the table, tucking her legs beneath her as she sipped her coffee, her attention half on her phone, half on him. "You always do things so quietly," she said, as though noting a trait she had previously admired. Aaron's lips pressed into a thin line, and he gave her a soft, imperceptible nod. No affirmation, no denial, only measured acknowledgement. He set a plate of scrambled eggs in front of her, placing it gently, then stepped back, hands folded behind him. The simplicity of the action belied the complexity of his mind. He was cataloging every possession, every habit, every corner of the house, noting how to remove her presence piece by piece without confrontation. Each small act of normalcy was a tool, each polite gesture a step toward the ultimate goal. The clock ticked steadily on the wall, each second marking time until he could begin the execution of his plan. Outside, the morning traffic moved along, oblivious, just as the city had been oblivious to his humiliation the night before. Inside, Aaron was both present and elsewhere, fully engaged in the mundane while orchestrating the extraordinary. Lauren hummed again, satisfied with the calm, the appearance of normalcy, unaware that the very stability she took for granted was already slipping away. She poured more coffee for herself, smiling faintly. "I knew you'd understand," she said almost to herself, thinking he was merely considerate. Aaron's eyes flicked to hers, calm, composed, and unreadable. Inside, patience and precision had become his allies. The facade would hold until the time came to strip it all away, and when it did, nothing would remain. The lawyer's office smelled faintly of polish and paper, the scent sterile but comforting in its own way. Aaron sat in a leather chair, his calloused hands folded neatly on the polished table, the quiet hum of the air conditioner filling the pauses between words. Across from him, a man in a dark suit adjusted his glasses and opened a thick folder, neatly organized with papers, forms, and legal notes. The room felt heavy with quiet authority, each tick of the wall clock emphasizing the significance of what was about to happen. "Mr. Miller," the lawyer began, voice measured and professional, "we'll start with some basic information. Years married?" "5," Aaron replied, steady, neutral. No trace of emotion slipped into his voice. "Children?" the lawyer continued. Aaron's jaw tightened, but his eyes remained level. "None." "Shared assets?" "None," he said again, slow and deliberate. The lawyer made notes, the pen scratching rhythmically against the paper. "You understand that this is the beginning of a process that cannot be reversed once filed?" "I understand," Aaron said calmly. His voice carried no bitterness, no hesitation. The weight of his answer was in the certainty behind it. He had endured humiliation, betrayal, and mockery, but he had transformed it into patience and precision. Today it would be made formal. The lawyer passed a form across the table, the official document granting authority to act on Aaron's behalf. Aaron read each line carefully, absorbing the words, visualizing the steps that would follow. When he signed, the pen felt heavy, solid, affirming the finality of what he had already resolved in his mind. "This gives me the authorization to act, file documents, and proceed," the lawyer explained, closing the folder neatly. "Nothing more binding than this today." Aaron nodded once, his calm exterior masking the quiet satisfaction that had begun to settle in his chest. Years of devotion, unnoticed sacrifices, and enduring mockery were now channeled into a controlled, deliberate action. He had been humiliated in public, now he reclaimed authority in private. After the papers were signed and organized, the lawyer explained the timeline, how long service would take, the filing process with the court, and when Aaron would receive confirmation. Each step was carefully outlined, and Aaron absorbed it all without question, mentally slotting each action into his plan. When he left the office, the sun had risen higher in the sky, casting pale light across the courthouse steps. Aaron paused at the top of the stairs, the city moving around him, people hurrying with coffee cups and briefcases, oblivious to the personal upheaval he had initiated. He inhaled, tasting the crisp air, feeling the quiet thrill of control in contrast to the chaos Lauren had attempted to impose on him. Sliding into his truck, Aaron allowed himself a long, steady breath. The first formal step had been taken. The humiliation, the betrayal, the mockery, all had been transformed into action. He would continue quietly, deliberately, and with absolute control, dismantling the life she had treated so lightly. The house, the car, the shared possessions, even the memories, everything would be addressed in turn. For the first time in weeks, Aaron felt a measure of calm satisfaction. Today the public embarrassment had been replaced by private empowerment. And the process had only just begun. The house was quiet, the kind of silence that pressed against the walls and seemed to stretch into every corner. Aaron moved through it with calm precision, each step deliberate, almost ritualistic. The sunlight filtered through the blinds, illuminating dust particles floating lazily in the air, giving the space an ethereal, suspended quality. It was still Lauren's home, yet he had begun the process of making it his own. He started with the garage. The silver sedan, once a symbol of pride, love, and devotion, sat gleaming under the faint rays of morning light. Aaron walked around it slowly, inspecting every detail: the faint scuff near the driver's side door, the subtle wear of the leather seats from countless drives, the lingering scent of her preferred air freshener. He opened the driver's door, feeling the smooth leather under his fingers, and imagined it being driven away, sold to a new owner who would never know the story attached to it. Next came the closets. Dresses, shoes, handbags, and accessories, all lined up meticulously, a visual testament to her taste, her vanity, her disregard. Aaron moved through them with methodical efficiency. He carefully removed each item, folding dresses, stacking shoes, placing handbags into boxes. Jewelry was collected in small trays, perfumes sealed in plastic, every item accounted for, cataloged, and prepared for removal. Nothing was left behind. The kitchen followed. Cookbooks, dishes, little trinkets she had collected over the years, all were examined then packed. Even small items, the ones she might have overlooked, were included. Aaron treated each object with respect, but also with a sense of finality. Every piece was a thread in the tapestry of their shared life, and he was methodically unraveling it. As he worked, he reflected on the countless moments these objects represented. The nights he had brought home groceries after long shifts, the evenings he had fixed broken appliances, the weekends he had spent painting and cleaning while she pursued leisure. Each memory reinforced his resolve. The humiliation she had inflicted had only made his determination sharper. Aaron paused occasionally, breathing deeply, feeling the weight of his actions. It was not spite that guided him, it was control. Every step was deliberate. Every object removed was a tangible representation of reclaiming what had been undervalued, disregarded, or taken for granted. By mid-afternoon, boxes lined the living room, the bedroom, and the kitchen. The house, once vibrant with the presence of both, now felt hollow, waiting for the next phase, her departure. Aaron stood in the center of it all, hands on his hips, surveying the transformation. There was a strange calm in the emptiness, a quiet satisfaction in the orderliness of the removal. When he finally set down the last box, Aaron allowed himself a moment to reflect. The public humiliation had been sharp, cutting deep, but now he wielded quiet power. She had mocked him, laughed at him, and made him feel small. Yet here, in the privacy of their home, he held authority. Piece by piece, he was dismantling the life she had taken lightly, preparing for the day when she would confront the finality of her choices. The sun dipped lower, casting longer shadows across the stripped rooms. Aaron stepped back, taking in the result. Control regained, patience exercised, and a life prepared for the next inevitable move. Lauren returned home that evening, her heels clicking sharply against the tiled floor, a soft hum of her favorite song spilling from her earbuds. She carried shopping bags in one hand, her phone in the other, still wrapped in the light arrogance that had marked the night of her public humiliation. She expected Aaron to be the same man she had left behind, quiet, compliant, perhaps even remorseful. She expected nothing. The door opened, and the house greeted her with a hollow stillness. The faint echo of her heels on the wooden floor sounded unusually loud, and she paused mid-step. The living room, once orderly yet distinctly her own, had been stripped bare. Boxes lined the walls, their contents hidden but clearly labeled. Dresses, shoes, handbags, perfumes, jewelry, everything she considered integral to her life had been packed and prepared for removal. Aaron stepped from the kitchen, his posture calm, steady, composed. He had changed little physically, but there was a new weight in his presence, a quiet authority that filled the space. His eyes met hers, and for the first time in years, Lauren saw not the man who had accommodated her whims, but a man fully aware of his power and control. What is all this?" she asked, her voice faltering slightly, betraying the first crack in her confident facade. Aaron didn't speak immediately. He walked slowly toward her, hands folded behind his back, each step deliberate, measured. The silence stretched, heavy and unyielding. "You wanted me gone," he said finally, his tone calm, almost conversational. "So I gave you your wish." Her lips parted, a brief, incredulous gasp escaping before she composed herself. "Aaron, this isn't funny. Where are you going with this?" "I'm not going anywhere," he replied. "Not in the sense you mean. But everything that was yours to control, everything you mocked, laughed at, or dismissed, it's being moved out. Sold. Separated. The life we built together is no longer ours. It belongs to reality now, not fantasy." Lauren's face drained of color. Her shopping bags fell to the floor with a soft thud, forgotten. She glanced around, taking in the boxes, the stripped shelves, the meticulous organization of every item. Her laughter, the arrogance she had carried for so long, faltered into silence. You can't do this," she said, voice trembling now, a rare vulnerability creeping in. "You can't just, this isn't fair." Aaron shook his head slowly. "Fairness isn't the measure here," he said, calm but firm. "Respect is. And respect was never given. You mocked me publicly, whispered about erasing me from your life, laughed at my devotion. Now the consequences are real." She stumbled back a step, searching his face for anger, for revenge, for some trace of uncontrolled emotion. But there was none. Only calm, precision, and finality. The man she had humiliated was gone. In his place stood someone who had quietly taken control, acted decisively, and ensured the balance had shifted irrevocably. Lauren's voice dropped to a whisper barely audible. I didn't mean." Aaron held up a hand, gentle yet commanding. "Words have consequences. Actions do too." He paused, letting the silence sink in. "This is your final lesson. You wanted me gone. Now you have it. On my terms." The room was still, heavy with the weight of inevitability. Outside, the city moved on, oblivious. Inside, Lauren finally understood the depth of what she had provoked, and Aaron knew, with quiet satisfaction, that the first chapter of the end had been written. Subscribe, like, comment and share for more interesting stories.